Hi, I'm Bridget Price.
And I'm Lauren Kemp.
And this is Entrepreneurs in Progress. Business owners are essentially professional gamblers. We take risks every day in hopes of hitting it big. Entrepreneurs also navigate significant amount of uncertainty, not knowing exactly what the future holds. As we wrap up season 2, we are taking on new calculated risks to parlay our professional businesses and our podcasts. So we're here to talk about that. Business risks can take a toll, but we aren't folding anytime soon. Okay, that's enough of the gambling puns. Let's get started. Lauren, I think the nature of our podcast and our conversations are around the risks we've decided to take as entrepreneurs and essentially documenting where we're successful, where we've floundered, what we've learned. And the reality is entrepreneur life is just filled with risks. It's a risky game of sorts, and we're essentially rolling the dice. I have to say that when thinking about entrepreneurship, I knew it was inherently a risk, but I'm not sure if I always weighed out or calculated the risks and determined how I could be successful. I think it was just like a deep dive in. Let's see how it shakes out. I am nervous. I am scared, but not necessarily saying I'm taking this huge risk. And I think that's because we ultimately dipped our toe in the water. We did side hustles first, or we continued to hide behind our full-time employment. But what are your thoughts about the risks that entrepreneurs have to take, and what's the consideration behind those risks, if any?
Yeah. So I think that when Brian and I talked about it this morning, we go over the show notes together, we agreed that there's a lot of uncertainty with entrepreneurship, but not necessarily a lot of risk depending on how you go about it. So I think what we've said is we take calculated risks. So it was a calculated risk that we did Rotive because we're a Salesforce partner doing consulting services. We both worked at Salesforce. Brian sold Pardot. That was his job. He has the sales background. So it wasn't super risky. I imagine like you guys starting a cleaning business with no experience at all might be a little bit more on the risky side, which is even more impressive considering all your success. So there are things like we have our background and we are doing this, and the way Brian views our business and failure, if the risk doesn't end up being a reward, is we're still learning along the way. Worst case scenario, Brian and I now have skills in marketing automation, and we can go back, find another job, utilize those skills, utilize the learnings of each failed business to help prop up the next one. Yeah. We're bootstrapping. We're still taking calculated risks because we're not taking out an extra mortgage on the house. Like we chose to make sure that we had a profitable business before we left, full-time jobs. So, well, for me at least.
Yeah.
It's not like if everything fails, we lose everything, because we don't. We've saved up money. We aren't overextending ourselves. We're not in debt. Like, we have enough time to turn things around. So I guess that's what we think about when we think about taking calculated risk in entrepreneurship, because what actually is very risky is also being in a 9-to-5 job, because you have no control over layoffs. You have no control over the direction of the company, and you have much more certainty, but not necessarily less risk, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. It's funny when we talk about our ideas or our plans to jump into entrepreneurship or start a new business, and it's often sometimes met with some concern from our loved ones and our friends, making sure that we are essentially hedging our bets, right? This going to work? Do you have enough savings to get by in case you don't make any money right away? Do you have everything that you need to get started? There is this cautious care that comes about from your friends and family. But that's not the same thing when you tell them or share the news of a new job you just got or a promotion. And you're right. I think entrepreneurs, sometimes we are looking for justification or ways to defend our choices. And so we're more tuned in to that uncertainty of employment, because it only takes one bad experience for someone who's an entrepreneur at heart, or someone who's been looking for an excuse to jump into this arena, to say or look at the downfalls of working for someone else. Oh, you can get laid off, you can get fired, you can work for a really crappy boss, you cannot get paid your worth. I don't want to deal with just 3% raises every year, things like that. And other people still feel like with the certainty of employment, knowing that you're going there for this amount of time, you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, you get benefits, they view it differently. But we've learned, unfortunately, that when you work for someone else, you have no control. You can only control the things that you do, your behavior, showing up to work on time, putting in the work, generating output. That's all you can do is literally controlling the work that you do. So why not control that work for yourself in another capacity and not be reliant on someone's business skills or savviness to keep you afloat?
Yeah. And we talked about all the reasons why people do that in the entrepreneurs versus 9-to-5ers episode.
Yeah. So go back and listen to that. Yeah. But yes, with that said, entrepreneurs, I think naturally, we don't view our choices as risky as outsiders do. And so we feel more comfortable taking this leap of faith. One, we've done the research, albeit sometimes anecdotal. We have been encouraged by other entrepreneur friends or stories that we've read, and we've made up our mind already that this is what we're going to do. So it doesn't feel that risky when you feel confident in your choice. And then, of course, like you and Brian, Marcus and I have made calculated risks, whether that's me working full-time while Marcus pursues entrepreneurship full-time, or while we both work full-time and grow a side hustle and see what happens or where it takes us. And so I believe that we accept that with the high risk, there's high reward, and we're willing to wait it out and ultimately reap the benefits of all of the hard work that we put in. Because that's the other thing. I think with risk, sometimes you're banking on like luck. And I think entrepreneurs are willing to put in the work necessary to make their dreams a reality.
Yeah, create your own luck.
Yeah, that's essentially what we're doing. But I agree with you and Brian, there is a high level of uncertainty with running your own company. And I think that is ultimately what we are navigating the most. Yeah, is unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah, definitely. Again, when Brian and I we're talking about the pandemic, and it's crazy because there are things out of your control and that destroy your business or at least take a hit. I know you guys at Made Easy took a hit when the pandemic started, and our business, we were like lucky that it happened to grow. That industry was able to weather it. And so there's a lot of uncertainty with things outside of your control. There's a lot of, for us, up and down months. Yeah. I was just like, oh man, Marcus and Bridget have at least that consistency with sales, and we are not quite there yet. Like our revenue took a nosedive from May to June and July. And now here we are in August, like working our butts off, trying to catch back up. It's definitely so up and down. And I'm sure you guys have experienced too, but there's a lot of uncertainty in entrepreneurship because there's no guarantee that just because you're doing good 1 year or 2 years doesn't mean that you will still be around in year 3, 4, 5, etc.
Exactly. And we thought we were riding the way we saw ourselves, just growing exponentially, organically, and we were super happy. And then, the pandemic hit, and our sales took a nosedive by over like 50% in 1 month alone. And that's terrifying because you don't know how quickly it's going to take you to recover. There are so many unknowns around the pandemic. Marcus and I had a really lengthy discussion at the end of March. We did not feel comfortable sending people into people's homes. And we said, should we just shut down in April, learn more about this virus, what they're planning to do to combat it, keep people safe? What do you want to do? And I took a really old school approach. I enlisted the help of my admin staff and me, and we contacted all of our current customers by phone and asked them how they would like to proceed. Would you like to put things on hold until May? Or would you like to keep your cleaning service for the month of April? And about half of them paused and half of them kept going. And they really appreciated the personal call and the touch. It was almost that feeling of like, we're in this together. They had uncertainty too. Immediately after, our state announced the lockdown, people lost their jobs. They had to cancel services. There's just so many unknown situations on both parts of our company and our customers. And then we had to deal with kind of relaying that uncertainty to our cleaners. And that was really hard, coming up with communication around, this is where we're at. This is what we forecast will happen over the next month. And we quickly worked on developing a strategy to try to get more business over the next few months, which we anticipated would be slow. And also keeping a pulse on what our cleaners want. We also asked our cleaners if they would prefer to work or stay home. And it was, again, half and half. Some of them had no choice, right? Schools were remote at this time, and some of our cleaning teams had kids. Others just didn't feel safe, but others like, hey, I need to work, put me out there type of thing. So it was very hard for us, and then very unsettling to see our numbers go down the way that they did, because again, we just didn't know enough to know if we felt confident and the other thing about this too, Lauren, as we were having conversations with other cleaning companies and their feelings, and they also took nosedive 50-60%. And Marcus is still working full time at this point. And literally a couple of his peers were like, man, hold on to that. And it's funny that an entrepreneur would tell someone to hang on to your job. And at that point, I think that highlights exactly what Brian was saying. There's more certainty with employment. And now you see or hear an entrepreneur choosing employment over trying to make sure they can navigate what's happening right now, because it was just all up in the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so tough when you lose that revenue and revenue goes down, because there's always that kind of fear in the back of your mind. What if it doesn't ever bounce back? Man,
we was following the unemployment numbers very closely. We were following just everything that could potentially impact our business. And we instantly felt that tinge of regret with operating a cleaning business. We were like, fuck, we should have did like a software-based business, because we saw software-based businesses booming. Like they were not impacted. And in fact, a lot of them are thriving and growing during this time. And we're like, oh, how did we end up choosing a service-based business where there's an interaction that's necessary between people, and now there's a whole ass pandemic that is preventing people from even being within 6 feet of each other. And it's funny because a lot of people assumed, because we were a cleaning company, that we were just raking in the dough, or like we had this huge spike.
Yeah, because everyone would want
people wanted to clean home.
Like, no.
But that's not how it works when you have a viral infection plaguing everybody. Again, those assumptions just not validated at all. And again, the question is, would you want someone to come in and clean your house? If the answer is no, then you should understand why a cleaning business could potentially suffer in a situation like this.
Yeah.
So girl, I was Googling recession-proof businesses. Like, what are we going to do when this all kind of shakes out?
Accounting.
Right.
But no.
Telling people how much they lost for the year. Yeah.
And I think too, that also, like, when you have the highs and lows with revenue, that also brings up how hiring is also a calculated risk, because you are saying that you are confident enough in your business that it will be able to continue making enough money to employ people. And that is something that Brian and I are still grappling with, trying to figure out, because maybe we had a little unearned confidence the first time around hiring, because we're like, oh, like we hit 30K for 3 months, and we're like, oh yeah, we're good. Things are looking good. Pipeline's looking good. And I don't regret our decision. That was a calculated risk. But then we ran into the issue this year where in the beginning of the year, we had a ton of business, which was awesome. But we hadn't done a good job training up and getting all the training in. So then we were like, oh shit, we need to train. Did all the training. And then summer hit, the summer lows, and now we have the training, but not enough business. Like,
so the timing is off.
Yeah, we really bungled that. But keeping it real, what we're trying to work through. And it is, man, it's been riskier than we anticipated. It has been really tough trying to decide what to do and bounce back and try not to make any rash decisions or panic or anything. And that's what Brian does really well. He's a lot more even keeled and stoic with the uncertainty.
Sure.
I thought I was doing good. I was like, oh yeah, like it's okay. We did really well one month. Great. We did really shitty the next month. No problem. And then when it happened to be like 2 months in a row, now I'm like, like internal screaming.
That's when it really challenges you.
Yeah.
Anyone can get through 30 days and be like, we're going to be all right. We're going to hang this, we're going to get through this. But then 60 days hit and you're like, oh, okay, I'm a little nervous now.
Yeah.
Doing my best not to show it. And I think I'm more like Brian in that case. I am more even killed. I'm calmer in those types of, I guess you can say, dire situations or concerns.
Sure.
Marcus starts really going through like anything that could be changed, updated. And it's funny, in those times of uncertainty is when he's willing to take more calculated risks. He's willing to do what's necessary to get us over the hump. I'm more, okay, let's just be patient. Let's wait this out and see and at least try to forecast something or foresee something based on what we know now. But he will take that information. He's no, we need to make this decision today. And it's calculated.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm like, you're reacting immediately to something that we don't have any control over. So let's just.
Well, that's the thing. You do think you have control over it. I think Marcus and I are similar in that way. We're like, okay, we see this trending in the wrong direction. We need to make changes. We need to make it now. We need to course correct. And we can have control over that. So that's so funny how Marcus and I are very similar. And you and Brian are very similar. So I guess it makes for a good entrepreneur partnership.
Yeah, definitely there's that balance between the two of us and both of our relationships. And it's funny because we saw it on the flip side too with our friendly competitors in the cleaning space. Girl, everybody was going to buy hazmat suits. Everyone was buying like really big equipment that can sanitize large spaces in a really period of time. They were offering their services. And I'm all for pivoting. I'm all for being agile and moving quickly with the new demands and what's going on in your environment. But are they using hazmat suits now? And maybe it was enough to get them by, or maybe it was enough to sow confidence so they can continue on. Because that's the thing as an entrepreneur. If you don't have the confidence that you can weather the storm, it's easier to crumble or succumb to what's happening around you. So I'm not faulting them for being creative. Yeah. And I think that's what makes a strong entrepreneur. And for us, we were weighing, what are we going to do? What other offerings are we going to provide? We had played around with offering offsite laundering care for families. Obviously, everyone's hunkered in at home and going through a lot of stuff. Maybe not, because I think most of us were living in our pajamas or something for days on end. But we were toying around with similar services that were in line with cleaning services and things like that. We never hit the green light on any of them, but we were still in that same mindset of trying to pivot amongst the chaos and come out on top. And thankfully, I think because we are in the business that we are in, and because of our politics, people wanted to try to get back to normal. We weren't down for super long, but it took us a lot to make up for the lost ground, if that makes sense. Yeah. We still gained, but not at the velocity that we were currently at before the pandemic hit.
Yeah. And again, that's something completely out of your control. So I think that there's just...
I want to say for reference for listeners in terms of the velocity in which we lost in 2020. At the beginning of March or mid-March, our projected sales were about to hit $50,000 for the month. And so that was March 2020, and we had been in business for 2.5 years. So we were super excited because that meant 2020 was going to be our year. Obviously, after the pandemic hit, that $50,000 forecast number fell down. The actual numbers fell down to about $39,000 for the month, which we were still happy with, considering that we went into lockdown in the middle of the month. And then April went down to 15,000 or 19,000 or something like that, which was, we hadn't seen those numbers in 7-8 months. But we did not get to our $50,000 a month until literally a year later. So we did not hit 50,000 until March 2021. So while we are still growing, and technically we grew year over year from 2019 to 2020, that loss in velocity, that loss in potential revenue, that can suck the air out of a lot of entrepreneurs, and the confidence can really dwindle.
Yeah, it's that confidence that I feel like it's so artificial, because there are times where like I'm riding high and I'm feeling very confident and great, and it's all future projecting. And then right now I'm like, I'm a little nervous. And thank God that Brian is very solid and always with the abundance mindset and the confidence and the no worries. Not to say that he doesn't get stressed or worry about things, but I think that his personality and his mindset and views does make it easier for him to navigate risk and uncertainty in building businesses. Because obviously, like, why would you keep doing? Why would he and Marcus keep going after failure after failed business? And they still do, because it's I think also recognizing that you're not starting from zero every time they start again. They are further ahead than where they were before, just from learning, just from growing skills. So I think that's important to remember as an entrepreneur. And they, again, with the calculated risk, they've never risked so much in a business that if they lost it, they lost everything and have nothing.
Absolutely. And for us, as we continue to grow, that's one of the main conversations Marcus and I are having around what we've been able to do with Made Easy. And you're absolutely right. Like, things are looking great now. We want things to continue to look great, but we don't know if we'll be around for year 5, 6, 7. We hope to be, and we plan to be, and we think we will be, but I don't know, another pandemic can come, a zombie attack. I don't know, but
zombie attack. We're all screwed.
We know that exactly. That's why I said it. We would be fucked if we had some type of zombie situation here. We'd have half of people not believing that there are actual zombies. We'd have half of people trying to convince them that there are like, it would just be awful. But yeah, no, I think you're right about that. I wonder if there's a personality trait that certain successful entrepreneurs have to navigate uncertainty and being pretty cool under really stressed conditions that are beyond their control.
I think there might be some personality with like how you handle stress and react to stress. But I think when it comes to handling uncertainty and risk, I think that's more of a mindset and a belief system that people have that allow them to navigate it and deal with it. So I don't know how much mindset and personality are intertwined, but I do think that if you have the right mindset, that abundance mindset, that learning, that growth mindset, that you are more likely to deal with the uncertainty and risk of entrepreneurship, because it's not a zero-sum game. Keep learning and growing and figuring out and trying. It's that resilience that you got to build up too. I don't know if it's personality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Brian and I are pretty different personality-wise, but I think that it's not because of our personalities. I think it's more because of his mindset that he's better able to deal with the ups, downs, ins and outs, all that.
That's a great point, because when you distill it down to a mindset or a mind shift, that means that anyone is capable of being able to change their thinking around dealing with a high level of uncertainty and strengthening that skill for themselves. And it's not something that's just inherent. I do think, yes, there are people who handle stress differently. And because of the way that they handle stress, they can operate better under certain conditions. And I think that's the importance of having a really strong partnership or having individuals who you work with who can balance each other. But yeah, I think it does take some time to get used to this idea that you basically are on the land of the unknowns. In hindsight, thinking about some of the fear I had around starting businesses and branching out ideas, it wasn't the risk. It wasn't the actual, like, I know I can go back to work if I needed to go back to work. I don't necessarily want to go back to a full-time situation, but if it's needed, I can do that. So the risk, you're right, is not really that. There's the unknown and not knowing what the hell is going to happen when you spend all your work, all your time, all of your energy into this business. Who knows how it's going to turn out? And I think that is what entrepreneurs really grapple with.
Yeah, I think you articulated it so well. It's that if it's a personality thing, there's that idea, that fixed mindset that you can't change. You can't change it. And then there's the mindset idea where, yeah, you can learn and adapt and work hard at changing your belief system And I think that is something that I have been actively working on for the past year and a half, 2 years. And I have made progress. I'm not where Brian is yet, but I do feel like, yes, I have been able to slowly shift my mindset in that direction. So I do think it's possible for people to do that.
Yeah. Do you all talk to anyone else in the industry, glean any information or tips with growing a software-based business or anything specifically in the Pardot space?
We're more service-based business than software-based business.
Okay.
And Brian talked a bit to another competitor, like he worked for them before going off and starting his own thing. But we don't actively talk and work together with other competitors in the space. I think our space is a little smaller with like Pardot consulting services. And there's also the giant Deloitte type consulting firms, Accenture, but it's not the same as what you guys are talking to other cleaning businesses in the area. I'm not sure why. I don't know if that's something that's like a us thing, or if it's just like an industry that's not as open, because I don't know.
Yeah, I only bring that up because we've been able to glean so much from like some of the cleaning people who have been killing the game for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And a few of them have taken a really strong liking to Marcus, and they're sharing a lot of really great insights to how they've navigated certain storms. And having that insight is really helpful to help us decide what we're going to do next or how we're going to deal with an issue that we didn't have within our control. And so even for both you and Brian, as you are navigating kind of these slower months and wanting to make up for that lost ground, just having some person in the space or similarly in the space that you guys can go back and forth with. That really helps too, I think, keep an open mindset and really continues to cement for entrepreneurs. Like, people have been where you were before. You're going to come out on top. You are doing this right. Your mindset, how you're thinking, your philosophies, that's going to carry you through. And I think that has been really helpful for both me and Marcus. I tend to be more on the optimistic side. Marcus tends to be on the, oh man, we're fucking up. Like, we need to.
Yep, that's me and Marcus.
We've done so many things wrong. This is what told me. I'm like, what I hear is that there's room for improvement. What am I missing here? Like, we got the information sooner than later. But again, it's that balancing act.
Yeah, I think too, that might be a little bit more personality type, where you're naturally either gravitating towards the optimistic side or the pessimistic side. But yeah, I'm definitely more like that too, where I'm like looking at worst case scenarios more often.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I said this on an earlier podcast, but like Brian and I were talking, and I was just like, because I've been worried about the uncertainty and stuff going on lately. And I was like, oh, all right, our worst case scenario goes back down to you and me, and we're just freelancing. And he's like, hey, your worst case scenario is so much better than it was a year ago. And I was like, oh.
Aww.
Yeah, a year ago, I was like, we're going to lose the house. We're going to have to find other jobs. Like, we're going to be miserable.
Yeah. Right.
I'm like, right. We'll make a decent salary and just freelance the two of us is the worst case scenario in my mind right now. So it's funny how that changes.
No, that's amazing. We literally had a similar conversation earlier this week, and it wasn't under the concept of risk and uncertainty, but it definitely fits within that arena. So I'm going to pose a question and I'm going to share a story, but I wonder if entrepreneurs who work together can really gauge or measure their partner's fear of risk or taking calculated risks, and then if they can measure or calculate how they feel about managing or dealing with uncertainty, and if that can be catered to. I've been very transparent. I was not fully bought in on this concept of Made Easy. I was like, oh my God, here we go again. It's another business. And now it's a cleaning business. Like, we don't know anything about this. I'm like, what are we doing? But I was like doing what I know what to do. I was providing that support, but in the back of my mind, there was this gnawing, like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. I just don't see us getting to $10,000 a month. I don't see us getting to this. It was just constantly picking at me. And sad to say, one of the realizations we had in our conversation earlier this week was that I felt like my attitude somewhat stalled our growth. And had I been less concerned about the level of uncertainty around this business, not knowing the business, understanding the business, we could have probably hit 50,000 a month in our second year and been more consistent. Marcus has different feelings around that. He's like, I feel completely opposite of that. I feel like we wouldn't even be here without all of your contributions and what you've been able to do and how you've been able to navigate things. So we had the coming to Jesus moment in that regard. I said, all we can do is take what I know now, take my attitude shift and my mindset shift, and make up for lost ground, which I know we can do. And he was like, yeah, I guess you're right.
I don't necessarily see it as lost ground or anything. It's just the growth. It's just the journey, you know. You learn something along the way.
Because you don't know. It's hard to say what would have been lost because
and it's
exactly
a parallel universe.
Yeah, and there's considerations. We both were working full time when we started Made Easy. We were working full time 2.5 years, 3 years into the business before I was fully focused on Made Easy. He was literally working full time until February of this year. So of course, sometimes in hindsight, we fool ourselves in thinking that we know more. Yeah, we knew more than we do now, and we don't. Exactly. But yeah, that's why I wonder if we can, if I wonder if Marcus would have tapped into my uncertainty at a deeper level way back when, if that could have changed things, if I could have come around faster, for lack of better words.
I don't know, but I think it's like you said, we'll never know. Hindsight is 2020, and all we can do is the best that we can with the information that we have at the time.
I agree. And I guess I share that to say with any entrepreneur or entrepreneurs, it might be beneficial to have a risk and uncertainty conversation to really understand what types of things around starting a business, the uncertainty, if it's around revenue, growth, hiring, quickly pivoting, what will trigger your partner or partners, and how do you, again, appeal to that, and how can you work together to strengthen everyone's resolve around uncertainty. But ultimately, if you're in the game long enough, like you're experiencing, Lauren, you're eventually, it's going to grow, you're going to adopt, and you're going to change. So
I think it's just making those major decisions together, because the only way I could see it ending up, you know, being a problem is if there's a major decision and you have two people on two ends of the spectrum who are very risky and have no problem with it and super risk averse. If the risky person makes a major decision that impacts them without discussing it with the other person, I think that will end up being a big problem between them. But I think because you can be on two different sides of that coin, but if you are making decisions together as a team, as a partnership, it's essentially saying, okay, I know I feel this way, but I'm choosing to do this with you, and I'm making this choice. Otherwise, you end up blaming the other person, and resentment will build.
Yeah, so. Exactly. You don't want to harbor any resentment. You don't want to create an environment where that exists. And I agree, those big decisions need to be made together. Like, one person can't be left out the loop on a major decision. Because when someone makes a decision without you, it's breeding uncertainty. You don't know why they made the choice. You don't know why they didn't share it with you. You don't know what's going to happen as a result of that decision, especially if you disagree with it. So it does give breeding ground to uncertainty that really you shouldn't have to do that.
So what are some risks that you guys have taken in your business?
I think most entrepreneurs can relate to this. For the first year or so, I was totally fine with holding all the hats, like doing everything. Like, I will run payroll, I will hire people, I will answer the phones, I will de-escalate customers, I will do the scheduling. And so calculated risks that we've taken is essentially replacing Bridget times 12, incorporating people who can help do those things. So that's definitely a needed and calculated risk, because in the beginning, you're essentially, if you're not making any money, you're paying out of pocket. We literally had savings, our personal savings, dedicated to paying our staff members. And again, it's a timeline to that. Like, how long can this really last before we dwindle our savings, and how quickly do we have to turn around earnings? So at the very least, if we're not getting paid yet, we can afford to pay people to keep this machine going. So that's definitely a calculated risk. Last year, when the pandemic hit and we again had that loss in revenue, I was thinking of creative ways to try to make up for it. And we had already entertained this for a couple of years prior, but we decided to do a special project, which is college turns. And essentially we were in contract with a property management company to clean apartment units in anticipation for students to return back to college, Arizona State to be specific, which was also an uncertain time because in working with that, there was unknowns on whether or not students would be coming back to campus because of the pandemic, but they still needed to be cleaned nonetheless. So that was a calculated risk because we had never done a college turn before. And college turns are massively difficult because you have like older apartment buildings, you have students who have left the apartments in disarray, and then we have to also invest a lot of money up front. We have to take care of all the supplies and equipment for our cleaning teams for those special types of jobs. And then we don't get paid for 30 days. These types of contracts are a net 30 type of game. We actually didn't get paid for 60 days for this project, and it was so annoying. But yeah, that was definitely a calculated risk. It infused instantly in 1 week. We made roughly $20,000 in that week, which is nice. We didn't see it for a while, but so that was a calculated risk that we decided to take. I will say that too, like when you're a new business, depending on how you work with vendors, that net sum game is really tough.
Yeah.
Being depending and hoping that vendor comes through and they pay you in the net 15 or net 30 and it's not delayed or there aren't any issues. And I think last year, all of it was unknown because people were working remotely, systems had changed, like processes had changed, all of that. And then we've read horror stories about college turns and these property management companies taking forever to pay.
Yeah, that's why we mitigate that risk by having people pay up front. But even so, sometimes we'll give 50% up front, 50% halfway through. And we're not entirely sure if we're going to get paid that other 50%. Sometimes it's delayed. That's, risk and payment is not fun, especially if you are working with a vendor that can command those net 30 or net 60 payment terms. Like we're lucky enough where our, payment terms are, the cost of our services is relatively low. It's not one lump sum of 30K or 50K, but yeah.
I thought you guys took a required payment fully up front.
Most of the time.
Okay.
Majority of the time it's payment up front. In some cases, we will split it to 50% up front, 50% at the halfway mark.
Have you ever had non-payment from a vendor?
Not yet, but we might be.
Oh no!
Again, thankfully, it's lower, some. It's one of those things where we're not going to hire a lawyer and chase people down. I think that...
Shake them down.
Yeah. Send in the goons.
Yeah.
No, I think that they'll pay. We have not been, like I said, we have always been paid. This one might be taking a little bit longer.
Okay.
We're not sure why, but we will see. But that's why we have people pay up front, is to avoid situations like this.
Yeah, it's fingers crossed that you get paid, boo, because I know Lauren got to have her money. So
yeah, but you gotta
which
sometimes it's gonna
fair.
happen. I would be very surprised if this never happens to us ever. So it just might be that time.
I hope not.
Yeah. I think the calculated risks for us and I think for you guys too, it's like when you leave your full-time job to work on the business full-time. So Brian was already working on it, but when I left, that was a pretty calculated risk. Kind of. I was like, I am out whether or not, one way or another, I need to be out. So
yeah, like this is happening, and we gotta. If we didn't calculate it before, we're gonna calculate it.
Yeah, we're gonna crunch those numbers, and it's gonna work.
Yeah, we're gonna make this work.
Oh, poor Brian.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Okay,
and I think the other big calculated risk for us was hiring, and like I said, we've struggled with our processes, we've learned a lot, that we've learned so much, and we are still working our way through it, but we think we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I have a good feeling for you guys that what you experience in June and July, that will be what you expect probably in the summer or maybe potential future summers, who knows. But I think you guys will continue to get back to what you were experiencing April, May, especially as people are coming back from being outside, as the kids like to say.
Yeah.
And being
Q2 is historically the low software sales month anyway for our industry. So it was when the pandemic hit, it did the opposite, which was super surprising. But now it's, oh, I guess, yeah, this makes sense. And the reason our numbers are down are for various reasons, summer being one of them. So much work on the front end that now we have to actually deliver and haven't had enough time for sales. And so it's just crazy because I was kicking myself. I was like, when we were doing super well, I was like, oh, we don't need to like work on our lead gen. We're good. Like we got more business than we can handle. And then now I'm like, fuck, we should have built some kind of lead gen thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one of those things, again, learning lessons, like you realize that you always got to do this. It's one of those things sometimes where I'm like, we have enough cleaning teams. Like we can do a quick break on hiring. And then one of our cleaning teams is decided to leave or they're unavailable for a large period of time. It's like, crap, what was I thinking? Now I got to get this job post back up and go through this process when I could have just continued to funnel them in. And yeah, it's constant tweaking and learning and that type of thing.
Yeah, and we haven't even gone through a turnover yet with employees, which is great. But also, I know it's going to happen eventually. So that's where there's more uncertainty there because then it's, oh, what do you do when someone hands in their 2-week notice? It's you got to scramble and prepare for the leave. Or sometimes like I've had friends who are managers and like they weren't given any notice. Like a person gave same day notice and was just like, I'm done, or didn't show up for 3 days. And they're like, are you okay? Like, did something happen? Yeah. They like didn't tell them. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh no.
So
that's awful. That's the worst.
There's uncertainty there.
Absolutely. Girl, there was so much uncertainty in the beginning of Made Easy when we were working with these new contractors that we have not forged relationships with. Oh my God, are they going to show up to the job? Are they using our application? So much uncertainty because we've never done this before. And so we're literally on pins and needles. Oh my God, let this work. Please let this work. Thankfully it did. And there was, of course, hiccups along the way, a lot of them. But yeah, it's terrifying when you have uncertainty around your freaking employees because you can't control them. You can have measures put in place. You can have penalties put in place or consequences or repercussions or whatever.
Yeah.
But you ultimately can't control a whole ass another human being. So it's tough. It's really hard.
I have a question. So before the pandemic, was there ever a time in Made Easy's history where you guys considered just shutting it all down?
Honestly,
or you were worried that like it wasn't going to make it?
Never thought it wasn't going to make it. And make it is subjective.
Yeah.
So there's two different types of make it, right? There is the make it like, is this really going to be our leverage point? Is this really going to be our start into early retirement? Or is it going to make it to where we're no longer paying out of pocket to pay our staff or our cleaning teams? And it might bring us in a couple $1,000s a month type of make it. And so at the point that Marcus started Made Easy, I think in his mind, there was just like no turning back. This is what he was doing and we were going to make it. For me, it was to what degree are we going to make it?
Got it.
So we never thought about shutting down Made Easy at all. We were going to see how long it would take us and, you know, how far we would go. And actually, I take that back. I think I recall a conversation maybe a couple of years ago where Marcus was considering shutting it all down, but he was going through what entrepreneurs go through. That
is it all worth it?
Is it worth it? Not because of the actual numbers, because we were growing every month and every year. It's just he's so hard on himself, and he has a great circle of friends who he should not do this, but he compares himself sometimes. And I'm always reminding him, well, you don't know the full story. Like, use that as inspiration. Use that to drive you from time to time when you're feeling down. But we don't know the full context. So just pump your brakes a little bit, homie. It'll be okay. But yeah, no, never thought of it not having it. It was always going to be around. So that is something that is actually unique to all of the businesses we've started. Yeah. Feeling like even in the pandemic, we didn't think we would have to shut it down. So nice. Is that the same for you and Brian with Rhoda?
Yeah. Again, we've only been around for a year and a half. So
that's still a long time.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I should be like, yeah, we've been around for a year and a half.
Yes.
But yeah, we haven't hit one of those points yet. I'm a little nervous right now, but we're not even close to the considering shutting down.
Yeah.
So that's good. We'll see.
I have full confidence that you all will get there. And it's going to be a lot easier in the sense that technically you don't have to worry about hard expenses like office space or tangible goods and that type of thing. So you all will have the flexibility to still work on this to get it to, like I said, you'll never have to question if you're going to hit like $30,000 a month. Again, that's just going to be like your norm, and then it'll keep growing from there. So I have full confidence that that's going to happen for you guys.
I think that
it's really honestly staying the course.
Yeah.
As hard as it is.
Yeah. And I think that actually segues nicely into what are things that you guys do to mitigate uncertainty and risk within your business? Because I say this because, yeah, you mentioned we do have low expenses. For me and Brian, we don't have a lot of overhead. Our biggest expense is our employee. So we built in enough profit margin to mitigate the ups and downs, and we have low expenses in order to be able to weather those tougher times. So what are some things you do in your business to mitigate risk and uncertainty?
So the biggest thing is making sure we stay lean, or as lean as possible. So we try not to overhire, at least on the admin side, so we can pivot or move accordingly without a lot of disruption. The second part that we're working on actively, and I feel like we've been working on it since day one, is really growing our numbers and margins to a place where if we needed to invest, let's say, for example, another college turn, or we need to invest in another opportunity that will help us grow, then that's what we're going to do. So really being tight on those margins, really knowing our numbers first and foremost. And it can be scary to really know your numbers because, again, here you go thinking you can do everything. Like, we don't need that. Like, we don't need this. Like, we got that is sometimes a hard reckoning. I think the other thing that we do in terms of navigating risks or uncertainty is really, this sounds crazy, but sometimes just forcing ourselves to sit still in whatever's going on and really deciding or thinking about what makes the most sense, what naturally comes to us. Because I think Mark and I have developed an acute business acumen. It's not perfect, but we've learned so much over the last 4 years that we can sit with the problem, a huge problem, and figure out what would be the best recourse. And the most important part of that, you touched on that earlier, is that we have to make the decision together. Even if he comes with the idea while he's in the shower and then comes and talks to me about it, or if I figure out something while I'm driving, we have to come together and discuss it and then figure out an approach. And I think with uncertainty, if you can figure out how to make those big decisions together, that is going to help you navigate those kind of turbulent times, unknown times, and feel confident in kind of the choice that you decided to make.
Yeah, that's great. I think the finance part is a big one. Knowing your numbers, knowing your profit and your margin. For me and Brian, one of the biggest things that we do is we try to diversify as much as we can. We look for the weaknesses within our business. In year one, it was like we're too dependent revenue-wise upon, this one partner that we essentially like white label for. We need to diversify where we get our revenue from. So, okay, now it's like our book of business and a little bit of referrals. And the more that we can diversify where we get our leads from, that helps with mitigating risk. We also are trying to diversify like our business. We do client services, but we're also thinking about what products could we offer. We're also trying to slowly build up our YouTube channel. So we look at what are different ways that we could bring in revenue that all work together within the business and could generate leads as well that way. So diversification and figuring out where your weak points are. Like what happens if Brian gets sick for 2 weeks? It's okay. Like we want to hire a team so we eventually can have the business run. And then if something happens to one of us, we're able to still keep going.
That's a great point.
And we can't reach all of these goals and mitigate all that risk at once, but we are always actively trying to do it. Like,
thinking about it.
Yeah. We've talked about how initially we only did consulting for the Pardot software. I'm like, I've talked with Brian. I was like, oh, are we putting all of our eggs in one basket here? You want to be niche when you start out. How Pardot does and grows is also not necessarily within our control. So we're like, okay, do we do other Salesforce softwares? Do we stay in marketing and do other marketing automation softwares? We're always looking for where are our weak spots in our business, how can we diversify them? Even if we can't do it immediately, how can we work on things each day to eventually get there?
That's a great point. And when I mentioned us talking about finances, that is part of that diversification and trying to understand where we can diversify. We are trying to diversify our businesses, or essentially start new businesses, so we can diversify our streams of income and how we make money, leveraging what we have through Made Easy to do that. But yeah, building systems and processes in place so things make the most sense. We're in our cleaning business, though we do clean for Airbnbs, we are essentially planning to make our vacation rental cleaning like a whole other segment of Made Easy, almost like the residential cleaning and vacation rental cleaning, the two shall never meet, because a lot of people might think that they are similar, and because it's cleaning, sure, but vacation rental cleaning requires so much more than cleaning for a regular customer. And that's because in vacation rentals, it's a first impression thing. Like, these people have never stepped inside this home before. It has to almost sparkle and be brand new. And yeah, that is a great point about offering other products and services, understanding that you don't control products' success or how they grow. So what else can you do? And I think that's the point of navigating uncertainty, is really, I think, being keenly aware of your environment and what's going on in the world, so you can try to move accordingly. We've seen so many businesses fail to do that. When Redbox came out, Blockbuster was struggling with making something as instantly available as dollar DVDs, and they got put out of business as a result, not streaming their services or movies, and not really thinking about the world around them, how technology was changing, and that they needed to grow with the world. So we're constantly thinking about that too. I wanted to end on this note. There are reasons, obviously, that we've decided to lay our cards out on the table and take these huge risks with starting our business and growing our business and kind of just going into the land of the unknown. So I know that there are upsides to taking calculated risks and upsides to being able to properly thrive in your business after a period of uncertainty. For you, Lauren, what have been some of the upsides to taking the calculated risks, like you leaving your job and working with Brian on Rotif and hiring your employee? What have been the upsides to that?
Leaving my job, it was an instant quality of life upgrade. A lot of stress and weight lifted, not because they were a bad company. It was just like, I think I've talked before, like it wasn't a good fit for me role wise, and I was super stressed. So, that felt amazing.
Yes.
Obviously the upside also to helping out Brian was being able to do more. Like, Rotif has been able to grow faster with two people working on it versus just him. I was able to take a lot of the operations and logistics and some of the admin and finances, like a lot of these more detail oriented pieces of work off his plate, so he could focus on sales and client services. And so because of that, we were able to do much more. He was able to handle a higher client load, which obviously contributed to the growth of our business, which obviously contributed to us being able to make enough to hire an employee, which will hopefully we'll get to the point with our employee where he's able to take on, again, a bigger load. So that'll free up more of Brian's time to either take on more clients or to focus on different areas of the business. The upside of all the risk for us has just been growth. You're taking risks and you're hoping it'll help you grow the business, which will, in the long term, mean that you have that financial freedom. You can pursue other things. That's the end game. All the reasons why people want to become entrepreneurs, for that freedom, flexibility, uncapped salary, that kind of stuff. So the risks that we take along the way are all in to help grow and to get to that point.
Yeah. I want you to replay this back when you're questioning, like, oh my God, are we going to be okay? Because you were able to succinctly pinpoint that by you leaving your job and working on the business, that you were able to help it grow to where it's at today. And I think that's huge. And I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for that, and be able to recognize like how far we've come as a result of you, just Lauren, being in the business and freeing up stuff for Brian. And then in turn, training up this employee. So again, like I said, those $30,000 months are going to be something that's just constant. And then boom, it's going to be $45,000 months or 50,000, like that's going to be your new norm.
Mm-hmm.
And so anytime you're questioning or feeling unsure about what's happening, just, I think, go back and listen to that. That'll be super important to hear. It'll continue to give you what you need to just stay the course.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, again, with entrepreneurship, it's that 2 steps forward, 1 step back. In order to get to the next level and leap forward, you have to go backwards a bit, reset, do something different, and then go from there.
It's those moments that help you identify, like you mentioned, the weaknesses or the areas that need improvement. All right. So you guys had one of your highest grossing months in May, but that has required more of your time to implement things and service the client. And so now next time when you have a $55,000 month, what is that process going to look like for you and Brian to get the work done?
Yeah.
They're all learning lessons. It sucks. Freaking see your numbers go down and you're like, you're that meme with that lady doing all those equations.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
where did we go? What have we done?
You're trying to move all kinds of pieces around. Like, okay, if I do this month, I do that, okay. You are constantly figuring out everything as you go along. Like, okay, this month I'm gonna have to cook a little bit more, or we're gonna have to do this, or I might my drink of choice might have to be 2 buck chuck, but it'll be all right. So I feel you on that, because that definitely, we've experienced it. So that's how I know you will see the other side of those down months.
How about you guys? What have been the upsides of taking risks in your business?
Very similar to yours. When I got into Made Easy full time, it allowed Marcus to breathe. He just felt so relieved that, okay, I have someone here who I know, even if we don't agree on everything, we can get on the same page together. She understands the plights and what I'm looking to do, and she can hold down the fort. And that's essentially what I've done at an operational level and grow the business. Because I think one of the reasons we got into this on Brian's episode is, I think one of the reasons we are similar is I actually am a good salesperson, just not in the traditional way. So I have the capacity to grow our business in sales because I intimately know our product, services, and offerings. I can make people feel comfortable on the phone with me. I can help elevate that experience across the board. And so when I came in, sales grew exponentially when I came in full time. And so he was super excited to see that. I also felt relieved of working in the business and seeing it grow and witnessing kind of the relief that Marcus felt too. Because I felt it too. By me being here, he was in a better mood. He was feeling lighter about things and stuff like that. So long story short, yes, upside was growth. Other calculated risks that we've taken in terms of delegation has been also giving us room to really think strategically. And that is why we are able to have financial conversations around diversifying and diversification of our assets or limited assets and what we plan to do for the future. And so even navigating the uncertainty of the pandemic has almost given us this kind of confidence. We're like, okay, we can handle a lot of shit. So let's just kind of keep this train moving. I think once you do come out on the other side of that, I think you learn quickly that something's going to come up. And if you are strong enough, you're not going to buckle and you can fight through it and get through it and be creative. It'll still be challenging and it sucks knowing that something else is right around the corner. But we have gotten to a place where we feel really confident that we can go ahead and get through it.
Nice.
Yeah. With that said, I think we'll end on that note. And I'll say this to anyone who is listening. I personally feel like you can thrive in uncertain times. A lot of entrepreneurs are born out of times of uncertainty because ultimately, I think all of us really want to control how we work, what we do, and then how we earn a living. And so with that, just follow your gut, trust your instincts, use previous experiences to help inform your decisions. But I think ultimately, while we take calculated risks for a high reward, I think that we know that eventually it'll pay off. So be sure to share, like, subscribe. Will we be back for season 3? You can definitely bet on it. We can't wait.
Yeah. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn,
YouTube.
But thanks again for listening through another season of Entrepreneurs in Progress. Bridget, thank you for being my partner in this. This has been so much fun again, and I'm already excited about what we're going to do for season 3.
Yeah, until then, we'll see you guys later. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Bridget.